It does not matter what happens in this country. Donald Trump has found the perfect cudgel. Donald Trump has found the perfect scapegoat. All of the sub-mediocre white men in this country, the white supremacists, they have found the perfect way to get away with all of their incompetence, to get away with all of their failures, to get away with all of their mediocrity, their sub-mediocrity, to get away with every single one of their mistakes, intentional or otherwise. All they have to say is DEI. In the wake of a crash between an American Airlines flight and a Black Hawk helicopter just outside of Reagan International Airport in Washington, D.C., where all lives are now feared to be lost, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has found a way to blame diversity, equity, and inclusion. I need you to understand that at the time that Donald Trump made these comments, there are still bodies that have yet to be recovered. And yet the disgraceful commander-in-chief of the United States of America took to the podium in the White House press room, and this is what he said.
Mr. President, you have today blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistake. You then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't.
But he wasn't finished. It gets worse.
Mr. President, on DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have. Yeah, yeah, please, go ahead.
I need you to hear what he's saying here very clearly. He is looking for anyone in the equation that is not a white man so that he can label them as the blame for this, as the diversity and equity and inclusion, the DEI hire that caused this tragedy. The investigation is still ongoing. Bodies are still being recovered. And you can see and you can hear in his words that he himself has no idea if anything remotely related to DEI is connected to this, but that doesn't matter. He's now pushed it one step further. Listen to how he is talking about the psychological profile of someone who is a DEI hire versus someone who is not a DEI hire.
Than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power, you have to go by psychological quality, and psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden.
We have come to the crowning moment of white supremacy in the United States of America, where every tragedy, every failure, every mistake of these people, yes, these people, will be blamed on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is their new dog whistle for black or anyone who is not a white Christian straight man. Anyone who does not fit neatly into the profile of MAGA is considered a diversity, equity, and inclusion pick. And so it doesn't matter what happens. God forbid one of the air traffic controllers was a black person. They are going to be taking the blame for all of this. Never mind all of the other factors that were involved. Never mind the investigation, because Donald Trump's not even waiting for the investigation. It does not matter what happens in this country. Donald Trump has found the perfect cudgel. Donald Trump has found the perfect scapegoat. All of the sub-mediocre white men in this country, the white supremacists, they have found the perfect way to get away with all of their incompetence, to get away with all of their failures, to get away with all of their mediocrity, their sub-mediocrity, to get away with every single one of their mistakes, intentional or otherwise. All they have to say is DEI. I'm so glad, actually, that we're at this point, because it has to be clear to every white person in this country who is a person of good faith that you are dealing with the most rabid strain of white supremacy in the history of this planet. There's nothing that they will ever take responsibility for. There's no job that they believe on the face of the planet that anyone is qualified for except a white Christian straight man. There's nothing that they will ever allow themselves to be held accountable for. Why? Because all they have to do is shout DEI, and all of their little maggots, all their little MAGAs with their red hats will come running, foaming at the mouth and say, yes, boss, it was DEI. Never mind the fact that it is the incompetence of white supremacy itself that is the greatest failing in the United States of America. It doesn't matter how hard you work. It doesn't matter how hard you studied. It doesn't matter that you were at the top of your class. It doesn't matter that you outperform all of your colleagues. It doesn't matter that you are the crowning achievement in the industry that you are in. You are a DEI hire. Why? Because that is the only way these sub-mediocre white supremacists can look like they are actually competent at anything. How else could Donald Trump, an impeached felon with multiple bankruptcies, multiple failed marriages, multiple failed businesses, how else would this criminal in chief become the president of the United States? Well, by just simply saying that everyone else on the face of the planet is unqualified to do anything except for white men. This is the crowning moment of white supremacy. But be of good cheer, my friends. There's only one place for them to go from here, and that's down.